Hello and welcome to the first video tutorial of the 3D Studio Max class at Oakton. I am Chad Myris. I will be instructor for the next 7 weeks, so if you're having trouble with my voice right now, hopefully you get used to it. First thing I want you to do is open up 3D Studio Max 2011. If you don't have it, go to students.autodesk.com and register as a student and go ahead and download the 2011 version. Once you have your application open, it's always a good idea to perform a reset. And this is one of the basic functions of 3D Studio Max, and it will just basically reset your screen to a fresh page. So up on the top left, where the File button would be, is the M button. Go ahead and click that and perform a reset. Do you really want to reset? Absolutely. Now, some of you may have a single viewport, some of you may have a quad viewport. These are both completely alright to work with. We're going to start in the quad viewport. So, the bottom right hand corner, you'll see two squares. It's the Maximize Viewport Toggle button. You can click that and it will go between the two. We'll explain what that means in a second, but feel free pressing that button and switching between the two. Alternatively, if you want to quicken your pace, you can do Alt-W, and that will do the exact same thing. Before we even begin, I want to form some basic setups. In the Customize tab up top, go ahead and click that and go down to Units Setup. Under Units Setup, you're going to have a lot of different options. If you're more architecturally based, you may want to use the US standard with feet with fractional inches, and then you can go into different levels of inch increments. The top System Unit Setup is for basic units, generic units rather. 1 is equal to 1 inch. Most of you will be using that. However, if you want to stay with architecture throughout the course, go ahead and click this US standard. So for the majority of you guys, go ahead and just select generic units, and lighting units, change that to American, unless you are from overseas or you prefer international if that's what your business usually uses, and then click OK. Because you want to be very comfortable with this program, you can go one step further in customizing your user interface, the UI. If you go up to Customize, you go to Custom UI and Default Switcher. You can go ahead and select between some of the UI schemes. I prefer dark, it's easier on the eyes. Light is the one that I have right now, and most of you should have. Otherwise, you have the default UI. I'm going to leave it on default since that's what many of you may have. So that's what we're going to keep. But just so you know, those options are there. The dark is another one that's very popular, especially for gamers. Architecturally, light is probably more your style. We're going to jump right into 3D Studio Max because it's really the only way to get used to the controls. On the right side, this is your main toolbar. Well, this is your main toolbar. This is your main command bar. On the command bar, you're going to see standard primitives, objects such as boxes, spheres, cylinders, and so forth. Each one is created a bit differently, but with a similar setup. Go ahead and select box. When you have box selected, you can see more options are popped up, and if you move your mouse into your viewport, it is a cross. The viewport that you are actively using will be highlighted in yellow. If you right click in the other viewports, you can see that they will turn yellow. We're going to stay with perspective right now. Go ahead and click anywhere on the screen, preferably in the upper left. Click and hold with the left mouse button, and then drag to the size of a box that you want. This is only the bottom of the box right now. You can see on the right of my screen that the length and the width are changing depending on how big I drag the box. Once I let go of my left mouse button, and move my mouse up and down, holding no buttons down, I can adjust the height of the box. I click it to set the height that I want. I'll try to get as close to 30 as possible, and then left click. Once you left click, the box is created. Once you right click, the bounding box leaves and your box is finished. If you left click anywhere outside of the box, it deselects the box. When you select the box, it will get these white bounding box frame around it, identifying that it is selected. On the right side, you see name and color. We'll rename this. We'll rename it box. I know I already said box on there, but it's good to get a feel for renaming items. When you have a scene of 100 items, it's easier to rename them early on. With the box selected, we go to the Modify tab. Create tab is where you select your primitives, box, sphere, cylinder, so forth. Modify tab is where you are able to actually modify your object. Length 107, let's make it an even 100. Width, let's go 60. Height, let's try to get exactly 30. Okay. Length, width, and height segments, I'm not going to worry about those right now. You can also click and hold the double arrows on the right side of any of these parameters and drag it a little bit quicker than you would be able to by single clicking. Okay, so we'll go back to 100. Having a box in our viewport, we're able to move it around using various methods and move our camera around as well. Select the box. In the upper left hand corner you will see three icons. Select and move, select and rotate, select and uniform scale. This is select and scale. We can change it to different types by holding it down. We'll go over that another week. With the box selected, we select the select and move. You will see that the center of the box changes to a gizmo. This gizmo works on 3 axes, and we are able to move it on those 3 axes or 2 at a time. So for instance, I would want it on the Y only, move it this way, X only, move it this way. I'm trying to center it on my black grid. If I look at my top, front, and left viewports, the box will move as well in conjunction to how I'm moving in perspective. If we go to the top viewport, I'm going to try to line this right up on the black. Perfect. Z-axis, you can see that this black line is our plane, and the bottom of the box is directly on the plane. That's perfectly alright. If you want to drop it below, that's okay as well. First thing we learned was that maximize viewport toggle. With the perspective highlighted, we're going to go ahead and click that. Now we have a full screen of our object in the perspective viewport. Select your object again. Instead of the select and move, go to select and rotate. Select and rotate gives you a different gizmo. This is an orbiter. Same axis. X-axis, Y, Z-axis. Highlight one of them. You're able to rotate it on just that axis. That axis will be highlighted in yellow. If you want to be in more than one, you click right in the middle and drag it in any direction you want. A little bit less control in this situation. If you're outside of the gizmo, it locks you with one axis as well. This may be a bit choppy, that's the recording software. On your computers it should be much smoother and more fluid. Last one is the select and scale. Click on the box again, go to select and scale. This is a little bit more interesting and a little bit more fun to use. The Z, X, and Y axis are still there with a different shape gizmo. If we select one of those axes and move it up and down holding the left mouse button, we can change the height width or the length of your object. Note, when we do this, the parameters do not change. So our box right now is 100 by 60 by 30. If we change the y-axis, that 100 is still 100. Okay? So once you use that scale modifier, these parameters are futile. You can undo anything you want by clicking Control Z or by pressing the undo button. If you go to Customize Preferences, you can change how many levels of undo you want. The default is 20. I usually change this to about 100 or so when I'm working on my scenes. Of course, the higher undos you have, the more RAM you use, and the slower your computer may get. If you have a more powerful computer, go ahead and go up to 100 or higher. Feel free to play around with your box a little bit, moving it around. If you feel comfortable enough, go back to the Create panel and bring in another object. I'm going to bring in a cylinder. Click and hold will create the base of the cylinder. Once it's created, I let go. Now I have the height. I can adjust the cylinder the exact same way as the box. If you want to change the colors of your objects, you can do so simply by the name and color tag. That cylinder we should rename. I'm going to name it Tube, even though it may not be a tube. It looks like one. Tube, I'm going to put it as a green. And our box will change to a magenta. At any time, if you want to see your scene in a little bit nicer quality, you can go to Rendering tab, Render. Should be F9 in most of your computers. I can't use F9 because of the recording software I'm using. So I'm going to do it the long way. And there we go, a little bit more high resolution render of our scene. I did that again by going Rendering and then Render. You can change the resolution of your picture by going to Rendering, Render Setup, and changing your output size right here. It's customizable. You can go up as high as you want and render it. The bigger it is, the longer it will take to render. Staying in this perspective, instead of rotating the objects, we will rotate the perspective of our scene. You do that by using your camera controls in the bottom right. We're familiar with one of them, the Maximize Viewport toggle. As you can see now, the cylinder is also in the other grids. Next to that is called Orbit. Orbit is one of the more needed functions that you're going to use. When you click Orbit, you'll have a yellow circle, an orbiter, in the active perspective. The orbit only works primarily in the perspective viewport since these three are orthographic. Select the orbit. Inside your orbiter, not outside, you can see the mouse changes between the two. Inside the orbiter, click and hold your left mouse button, and you are now able to orbit around the scene. This takes advantage of the 3D environment. If you have the orbiter and you're outside of the circle, you shift on one pane. It's a little bit harder to control and get back to a normal pane. So that's usually something that we don't use. Next to the orbit is a pan view. There's a hand. You see your mouse changes to a hand. This is simply panning around in the scene on a flat pane. You can use this for all your viewports since it is a 2D function. Zoom regions is simply zooming in. Oh, that's not the right one. Zoom regions. Zoom regions will zoom into a certain area. You can zoom in and out by using your mouse button as well at any time. The other option from zoom regions is the depth of field of view. This will, it looks like you're zooming in and out, but actually you're widening the camera lens. I wouldn't use that right away or at all